Hey, everybody. Welcome to Crackpot, the podcast where each and every week we dive into a different conspiracy theory and we discuss the merits or the demerits of each. We're your hosts. I'm Tim.
And I'm Zach.
Hello, Zach.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
We're doing it. We're recording.
Yeah, I hope so. So a couple things we just need to clear the air before we start. First of all, to our international listeners, of which we have literally dozens. No, honestly, I think somewhere between like a third and a half of our listeners are not in the United States. So I'm sorry. This is a very Amerocentric episode. I still think it's interesting. Yeah. And I still think you should listen.
Cool.
Second of all, we don't do a lot of politics. We don't do a lot of shows about current events / current politics, controversial politics, if you will.
Right.
I think this is pretty controversial.
Okay.
Or I don't know if controversial is the right word. I think this has the potential to make a lot of people angry.
Oh, cool. Even better.
So there we are.
It's a good show then.
I know that we have a lot of listeners on both sides of the political spectrum.
Sure.
And that's awesome. It truly is. I'm not just saying that to say that. I think if we only had one narrow band here or there somewhere, it would get pretty boring after a while. We'd get the same responses and we'd have the same conversation over and over. I truly love the fact that we have listeners of all political stripes.
Me too.
So if you're offended by this, I'm sorry. I really am.
Well, actually, we should say this, though, too, which is we're not journalists.
That is true.
We're not even suggesting that we are a news service, nor do we owe anybody anything.
Yeah.
So I've seen some reviews come across like, oh, they didn't label us. You know what? I don't care. We don't have to. We can talk about literally anything we want.
And we do.
And we do. So if you don't like it, deal with it.
So anyway, what I'm saying is if you're a longtime listener, a brand new listener, and this offends you or you don't like it or we didn't talk about something the right way, you know what? That's okay. Just tune in next week. Or go into the back catalog. We'll have something.
We got hundreds of other shows.
We will have something off the wall and crazy coming up for you very soon. I guarantee and promise you. So that being said, I really do like this. I think it is interesting. I think it is worth talking about. We are talking about the big lie, Donald Trump's big lie, the fact that he said that he won the 2020 election. But it's not just about that. That would be actually, honestly, a pretty short show. And we'll get into why. There's not a lot of facts behind that statement, but we will talk about that. No, it's actually a lot more. This is about the state of American democracy, the future of American democracy, and also eventually we're going to get to some real life conspiracy theories as to what could or might potentially happen in 2024.
Gotcha. Well, I was going to say, too, like the whole concept of the big lie is literally a conspiracy theory anyway.
It is. And that's the other thing. It's like we can't not do this. This is our wheelhouse. We are both political science majors. Yeah. We both studied the law for 3 or more years.
Many, many years.
So like this, and we do a conspiracy theory show. This is like topic du jour right now.
Bingo.
So we would be doing a disservice not to talk about it.
Fair enough.
So let's go into this. Let's talk about it. Let's break it down. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. So as I said, the big lie, as it's been called, is that Donald Trump says he was actually the winner of the 2020 election, when in fact Joe Biden won 306 Electoral College votes to Donald Trump's 232 Electoral College votes. If you want to look at the popular vote, which, as we all know in America, doesn't necessarily matter, you have Joe Biden winning 81,268,924, or 51.3% of the vote, to Donald Trump's 74,216,154 votes, or 46.9% of the vote. Pretty straightforward. Not only does Joe Biden think he won. Not only does a majority of Americans think he won, every independent news source says he's won. International election observers have said he won. Heck, Donald Trump, in legal filings, has also conceded the fact that he lost.
Gasp.
Yes, right.
Wasn't sorry if I'm going to go off road here for a sec. Also, didn't one of the actual courts say that in order to believe this, like you cannot have any like foot in rationality to actually believe any of these theories that he's putting forth?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I didn't read every single legal opinion, but yeah, I mean, I would assume so. But what is fascinating, and I'm going to just kind of read off some more numbers here, and this may or may not be surprising to you, but 36% of Americans believe that Donald Trump won.
Okay.
That's a big number.
Huge number, yep.
It's not 50, so we can say less than a majority and feel good about ourselves, but...
It's a third.
It's a lot of people. 36% believe the big lie. 78% of Republicans believe that Joe Biden did not win. So now, if you break it into specific political parties, you have a vast majority of one political party believing that Joe Biden didn't win. Interestingly, 82% of Fox News viewers think that Donald Trump won, and 97% of Newsmax/OAN viewers think that Donald Trump won. Have you ever seen that? Like, I don't have cable, so I've heard about it, but...
I'm shocked by these figures right now.
Eye rolling if you can.
Yeah, AKA North Korean TV, Fox News, AON, all that stuff. It's all it's propaganda.
It's crazy. It is crazy. But I mean, honestly, at no point, at least in my research, has the results of an election been so disputed.
Right.
In American history.
It seems to be a new thing.
It's pretty frightening is what it is. So there's this Yale professor who studies fascism and the rise of fascism. His name is Timothy Snyder. He says, this is a quote, "The lie is so big that it reorders the world. And so part of telling the big lie is that you immediately say it's the other side that's telling the big lie. But it's just a matter of record. And you can find it all in Mein Kampf." So, I mean, he's immediately drawing the parallel to Hitler, which, you know, we all know Godwin's theory, but we don't have to go into that in this moment. But I mean, even the big lie that comes from Nazi propaganda, and I don't want to ignore that completely. But what he says is that, yeah, Donald Trump says, oh, yeah, no, the big lie is actually Joe Biden and the media saying that he won.
Yep.
And it's, you know, you take everything there. And further, Donald Trump says, I'm not the one trying to undermine American democracy. I'm trying to save American democracy. So he just completely turns it on its head right there.
Sure.
So one of the Republican ideas is that, and I should have thought about this, and I never really gave it too much thought, to be honest, but one of the ideas, the way that the Democrats, quote unquote, won the election is that the Democrats either created the pandemic or exploited the pandemic which then led to the mail-in ballots, which people across the country used because, you know, in-person voting wasn't safe, and that was the Democrats' way of, you know, ballot stuffing measures and, you know, just, you know, throwing a bunch of Joe Biden ballots in, and then when they counted them, of course, there was more Joe Biden ballots than Donald Trump ballots.
Okay, so what this is alleging is that the pandemic, at the very least, was exploited because the people that would vote, or the people that be too afraid to vote in person, would actually vote remotely via mail-in ballots.
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, basically what they're saying is some secret Democratic operatives across the country just ballot stuffed. They just took ballots and mailed them in, and then when they opened up the envelopes and counted them, it was just there. I mean, it's
fraud, in other words.
Yes, exactly. That is what they're alleging.
Perhaps it's even saying it's easier to fraudulently vote remotely as compared to in person.
Right.
So, okay. All right.
So, I mean, that is one theory. There's a lot of other theories as to how the Democrats, quote, pulled this off. Okay. But honestly, at this point of the conversation, I don't even want to debunk that so much. It is all a matter of record, and it's if you're getting your news from a conspiracy theory podcast, I'm sorry. go out and look up any reputable news site you want or whatever. But what's fascinating is really, honestly, back to the point of just so many people not believing it. It's the bifurcation of American society is what it is, and it is just so fascinating. And I mean that from like a scientific standpoint. I don't mean that from like an entertaining standpoint, because honestly, living in the middle of this, it's really frightening.
Yeah. Yep.
It is truly like we are living in just two separate Americas. And I mean, that's not just you and me in our, urban, suburban, whatever in the upper Midwest. There is just a general belief among, and I don't want to paint the entire Republican Party in one broad stroke. That's not what I'm trying to do. But there's a general belief among some Republicans that Biden won because of votes from people who are not, quote, real Americans.
Okay.
And if that sounds loaded, it's because it very much is, unfortunately. 50% of Republicans polled said that they feel like they are a stranger in the United States. 80% of Republicans polled said that the country is losing its culture. And if you compare that to the fact that Donald Trump won the white vote, so of all white people in America, Donald Trump won the white vote by 8%. 8%. Which is pretty interesting, considering he lost by almost 4% overall. And Donald Trump won the non-urban areas of the country by over 20%.
So can you do me a favor and summarize that a little bit tighter for me? Because I'm getting a little bit lost in the numbers.
Sure. What I'm saying is that Donald Trump won the white vote. And Donald Trump, hands down, won the rural vote.
Sure. Yeah.
And really, it just kind of goes back to my point that we do live in a split society.
Okay. So the people that voted for Trump, I think what you're saying, also are feeling like more isolated in this sense, right?
Yes. Exactly. Okay. Honestly, I think regardless of your geographical location, I think honestly, regardless of your ideological persuasion, I think there's a very good chance, better than not, that you, dear listener, or you, Zach, probably don't talk to people that voted the way you did not in 2020. On a regular basis. I think that we are so isolated. I mean, you look at social media, you look at just where we live, as evidenced by these facts here, we just don't interact.
Well, you throw on top of that the isolation with COVID during the pandemic. Obviously, we're all just, or I shouldn't say all of us, but people are working remotely, staying home, schooling their kids at home, not going to work, all these things, right? So that layer doesn't help.
Okay. So that is kind of what I want to just start this all out with.
Okay.
So it's one thing to spread a lie, but what seems more likely than not at this point is the lie is not really about 2020 anymore. I believe that it's really about 2022 and 2024. I think the lie is setting up what is to come. He's laying the groundwork and he's prepping some stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk through some of the laws that have been passed, some of the things that are happening around the country as a result of the big lie, and ultimately what I think we're going to see.
Okay, gotcha.
Despite Trump's continued claims of a stolen election, his own administration, just 9 days after the election, just 9 days after the 2020 election, declared that the presidential vote was, quote, the most secure presidential vote in American history. So right away you have themselves, contradicting themselves, I guess.
So wait a second. So 9 days after the election,
they said that it was the most secure vote in American history.
Okay. Talking out of both sides of our mouth.
Yeah,
then,
a little bit. So then you go over to the Department of Justice, and you have a former acting Civil Division Assistant Attorney General. His name was Jeffrey Clark, who was appointed by Donald Trump. He began pressuring his colleagues at the Department of Justice to overturn the 2020 election, and he was doing so rather loudly and rather vocally, and he's currently, at time of recording, facing disbarment proceedings because of these legal shenanigans and spreading these falsehoods.
And it's very hard to get disbarred.
Oh, it's...
So
it really is.
You actually have to do some really obvious, bad, objectively provable things to get disbarred for anybody playing along at home.
It's true. We'll talk about some people that got disbarred in a minute here. So,
ouch.
Head of the Department of Justice, Mr. Attorney General William Barr. Not a fan of Democrats, to say the least.
I don't think he's a fan of anything besides himself and Trump.
Well, he worked for George H.W. Bush.
That's true.
So, I mean, all I'm saying is he's a creature of the Republican Party. Okay?
Creature is a good word. Okay, keep going.
That's fine.
Yep.
He resigned on December 23rd after declaring that the Department of Justice found no evidence of widespread election fraud, directly contradicting Donald Trump.
Sure.
I remember when that news came out, it was like, oh, wow.
Yeah, that was actually pretty quick.
It's like they're starting to turn on him.
Yeah.
Okay, we might be able to see this come to an end before the inauguration. Okay. There was a theory, and I don't remember this, but there was a theory being floated by Donald Trump at the time that the cheating of the ballots, the electoral cheating, was actually done by the Iranian military satellites that were erasing his votes.
That's amazing. Think about the technology behind that for a minute.
Hey, a Department of Justice lawyer called it, quote, pure insanity.
Yeah, I was going to say it sounds totally bonkers.
Totally bonkers.
But sweet if they could actually pull that off.
If they could pull that off, like, oh, why didn't they do it sooner? Why aren't we seeing more of it? And why didn't they affect any down ballot races?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Let's not even go there yet. So, Dominion Voting Systems. This is the private company that provided the voting systems that 28 states used.
Cool.
So they brought a lawsuit against Donald Trump's personal attorney, former mayor of America, Rudy Giuliani. Do you know how much this lawsuit was for?
What is this, like $1.8 billion?
$1.3 billion.
Nice.
$1.3 billion for some of the libelous and slanderous things that he has said about Dominion voting systems. Mr. Giuliani is currently disbarred for making, quote, demonstrably false and misleading statements about the presidential election.
Yeah, everything he was saying was just absolutely bonkers and just stupid. And it was like, you'd see him standing there making these claims, and you're like, what are you even saying right now?
Yeah.
It is so obviously false.
Well, and this isn't the point of this episode, but it's like, why?
Yeah, why?
Why?
What do you owe Trump?
Like what do you owe Trump, or what does he have on you?
Yeah.
What is your motive? Like, I know people think that attorneys are just paid to lie for their clients, but it's like, you really should not do that. That is just bad practice. Don't lie for your clients.
That'll get you disbarred.
It will literally get you disbarred.
And perhaps even a $1.3 billion lawsuit against you. So... Okay.
All right. And then, of course, when this came to the vote in the Senate, we will talk about the insurrection in a moment, but when this came to the vote in the Senate, Senators Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz contested the election in the Senate. So these are all things that have happened directly because of the big lie. Let's switch gears slightly. Do you remember the cyber ninjas?
Ooh, is this like a Lindell thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he was talking them up. This was the group that was brought in to basically to find fraud in specifically the Arizona elections.
Sure, it was like the metadata, getting into that, and
Yes.
the traces of the actual votes.
And I think the worst part about this whole thing is it's such a sweet name. Like the Cyber Ninjas.
Heck yeah.
It has to be used for nefarious purposes. It's like, it's too bad. It's too bad. So the Arizona State Senate hired the Cyber Ninjas to conduct an election audit. And if you are not or were not super tuned into American politics or whatever, if you just tune this whole thing off or out, or you live on the other side of the planet, good for you. Your mental health is probably better for it. But Arizona was one of the states that was, quote unquote, contested, I guess.
Sure.
It was a swing state that not everyone thought would go to Biden.
Right.
And some were surprised. You also have Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin,
Ohio,
all these states.
Yeah. These are all battleground states.
Exactly.
Right?
So anyway, Arizona State Senate hired these guys to come in and do this election audit. It was funded in large part, $3.25 million worth by a guy by the name of Patrick Byrne, who I'm assuming you've never heard of.
Never heard of him.
Founder of Overstock.com.
All right.
Okay. He bankrolled this, most of it at least. But he also kind of made a name for himself in this, area, I guess.
Conspiracy theory land?
Yes. Yeah, let's leave it at that. So he bankrolled a film by a guy who also said that aliens did 9/11. Okay.
Nice.
That's
special.
He once shared a stage with a QAnon supporter by the name of Baby Q, who claims to be receiving messages from his future self.
Yeah.
So good stuff. On top of all that, if you can brush that aside, he had a romantic relationship with a convicted Russian spy and current member of the Russian parliament, Maria Butina, and gave her several $1 million after she was arrested and convicted and deported for spying for the Russians on Americans.
What an idiot. Wow, what an idiot.
Okay. So Cyber Ninjas, funded by this guy. Okay. That's all fine and good. But the Cyber Ninjas went in and they claimed that the Arizona ballots that were counted that put Joe Biden over the top in Arizona, gave him those electoral votes, were counterfeit ballots from Asia.
Oh, wow.
And they were looking for these telltale signs, and they were out there with their microscopes and things like that, looking for, and I am not making this up, bamboo fibers in the paper.
Okay.
Because obviously if they're from Asia, they have bamboo fibers in them. And if there's bamboo fibers in them, they're obviously from Asia and counterfeit.
Okay.
They were also looking for, I guess, more conventional things like common creases in all of the ballots, which would be indicative of some sort of bulk mailing apparatus. Like there's just some Democratic headquarters somewhere, and they're all just Xing the box next to Joe Biden's name, drop them in the envelopes, and they're bulk mailed out.
Right.
So these are some of the things they were looking for. I will also say that March of 2021, 4 separate independent audits confirmed that Donald Trump lost Arizona. And an AP investigation found that 182 Arizona ballots were, in fact, problematic. 182 out of 3.4 million.
I was going to say, yeah. So the numbers are probably...
Yeah.
A little low.
Yeah, not
to swing a
not
state.
quite enough to put them over the top. Was there some wrongdoing? Yeah. Was it a fraction of a percentage? Yeah, also probably, maybe. 4 of those 182 ballots led to criminal charges, and all 4 of them were for casting ballots both in Arizona and in a different state.
Okay.
So not multiple ballots in the same state. It was like, and I don't know this, I'm just making up a scenario, like you have your summer home in Wisconsin and your winter home in Arizona, and you decide to cast ballots in both places and hope you don't get caught. And,
Sure. Yep.
So that sort of thing. On January 7th, 2022, the Cyber Ninjas shut down, and Maricopa County, Arizona, not exactly a liberal hotbed, said, quote, Cyber Ninjas made faulty and inaccurate conclusions about more than 53,000 ballots in 22 categories. So the big lie is not about the stolen election. It is about how to steal the next election.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So since the Cyber Ninjas went in, since Donald Trump has been talking about this, 19 states have passed new and restrictive election laws. Mm-hmm. State election boards are being taken over by Trump supporters that believe the big lie. And GOP state election powers are basically opening a path to overrule states' will and send their own electors in the future.
Gotcha.
So if a state votes for a political party,
yep,
they are finding a way to overrule the will of the people and send their own electors.
Well, this is something that came up actually around Jan 6, right? Which was basically, hey, you know, we can nominate whoever we want for the Electoral College. Yeah. We'll just not send the people that we don't want to go, right?
That was close. The January 6th thing, when they stormed into the chambers and they were, you know, looking for Mike Pence, wasn't to send their own electors. We'll get to that as well. Sure. That was more not counting specific states.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But you're exactly, I mean, at the end of the day, it's subverting the will of the people.
Right.
So, but speaking of January 6th, I will call it a coup. You can call it whatever you want.
It was a coup. I mean, it wasn't Antifa, my friends.
Yeah, right. Well, a failed coup is really practice for a successful coup.
Sure.
Is what it comes down to. And as president of the Senate, Mike Pence's duty was to certify the electoral votes. And after a Trump speech, a crowd made its way all the way across the mall to the Capitol. They broke through the barriers, entered the chamber, all while chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." And this happened while Donald Trump sent a tweet that was attacking Mike Pence. At the end of the day, 138 police officers were injured. 5 people were killed either before, during, or after. 1 was shot. 1 was a drug overdose. 3 people died of heart attacks, all trying to subvert the will of the American people. So let's talk about some of these election laws and voting registration things that are being passed in these 19 states so far. I assume we're going to see more, honestly, because I'm either a realist or a pessimist. I'm not sure which at this point. But basically, election reform laws have the either intended or unintended, pick your flavor, consequence of preventing Black, brown, indigenous, and young people from voting.
Sure.
It is putting barriers between people that don't have the same access, don't have the same resources, don't have the same time, honestly, to vote, and making it harder for them to vote.
Sure.
In some cases, it's removing the ballot locations from precincts that have a heavily minority population.
Sure.
And I mean, personally, I can only look at that through one lens. But anyway, I digress for the moment. The GOP is increasingly old. It is increasingly white, and its base is continually diminishing share of the population. And restricting other voters is one way to hold on to power.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, you and I, and probably most of the listeners listening, would say that it's not really a good way or a kind way or a fair way, but we can all agree it is certainly a way to do it.
Well, just by the numbers, just mathematically speaking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you need to remember that this is all being done because of the big lie and the idea that voter fraud is running rampant, when in fact it is not running rampant. all the votes casted in Arizona, and I'm sorry, I only have Arizona numbers at this point, but all the votes casted in Arizona between 2016 and 2020, nine people were convicted of fraud. All 9 of them were for casting ballots in other states and in Arizona. Voters don't cast fraudulent ballots for the same reason that counterfeiters don't mint pennies. It doesn't pay off.
It's not enough.
It is not enough.
You have to do a lot of forgery to actually swing a vote, like a state.
Exactly. In order to make it pay for you, you have to control the laws.
Sure.
You have to control the laws and thereby control the election. And the growing trend in the Republican state legislatures across the country is to strip the secretaries of states and other independent election officials of their power. And this is what we're seeing time and time again in states with Republican governors and Republican legislatures. Richard Hansen, who is a law professor at the University of California, Irvine, and probably the country's foremost election law expert, he says, and I'm going to quote here, and I'm going to use a bad word, so earmuffs for small listeners. He says, quote, "I'm scared shitless. It's not just about voter suppression. What I'm really worried about is election subversion. Election officials are being put in places who will mess with the count." So, there's a long way for me to set this up. So we got 2 different scenarios that I think are pretty likely, more than not, that we could see happen in 2024. One of them is having to do with the Electoral Count Act, and the other one has to do with the Independent Legislature Doctrine. So let's talk about the first one first, the Electoral Count Act, because this is kind of in the news, at least, again, at time of recording, late January of 2022. There seems to be some bipartisan agreement that this law should be updated to prevent what we saw the mob try to do on January 6th, and what Mike Pence thankfully did not do was, which is basically not count certain states.
Sure. Yep.
So the idea behind this, it's a 135-year-old law that basically explains how to count the electoral votes. So real quick, real high level for those of our foreign listeners who might still be tuning in that might not know the wonderful beauty of the Electoral College, Zach, can you walk us through it in like 2 sentences, more or less?
Well, the idea is that the number of people in a given state corresponds with the number of electoral votes that state has. And so if you win a certain percentage of the population, those corresponding electoral votes go towards counting for the president's ballot total.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, like each state has a different number. So what, Wyoming has 2. I think Minnesota has 5 or 6.
No, Wyoming has 3. Everyone has 3. Yeah.
3. Okay, there we go. So, yeah, I mean, basically the math checks out in such a way that, different areas of the country and different states have different numbers of people that vote.
So you get the number So the most powerful elected position in the country is the only elected position in the country that is not done by popular vote.
Yeah, which is why you have a situation like, Hillary Clinton winning the popular vote.
Yeah.
But still not actually becoming president.
Yep. Which in 2000 it happened before, and they said, "Oh, this is a once in a lifetime occurrence. This could never happen again. Don't worry about it. This is a fluke," right? But yes, to reiterate what Zach said, every state has a number. So presidential electors are trying to win these states, and every state brings the total number is the number of people they have in the House, as well as the number of people they have in the Senate. So Minnesota has 10, right? 11?
Yeah, around there.
My God, I should know this. Anyway, we'll edit that in post. Okay. So, like I said, 135-year-old law that explains how to count those electoral votes, which is what they were doing on January 6th, 2021. Why is this law 135 years old? Because it was passed around the time of Reconstruction, when the northern states didn't really trust the southern states to do everything on the up and up. And they thought that, like, maybe let's pick your random southern state would vote for presidential elector A, and they'd be like, "No, we're going to send B because we like B better." And then without this law in place, when they counted them, they would have to take B. But this gives them a chance to check those and then send the right electors' votes to be counted, if you still follow me. So basically what needs to happen is you need a member of the House and a member of the Senate to both oppose the counting of a state, which is what Senator Hawley and Senator Cruz both did. So if Pence would have gone along with this, we would have a President Donald Trump at this point.
Sure.
But Mike Pence had a backbone and stood up to him while people were chanting for him to be hung. And they also brought a gallows to the march. Like, that's pretty wild. Anyway. So all I'm saying with this is that given the wrong set of actors, with this law still in place, it wouldn't matter who the American people voted for if a majority of the Senate and a majority of the House, and you had the parliamentarian, which would be the president of the Senate, which is the vice president, they could, in theory, just keep themselves in power every single time.
Right.
Which is insane.
Yeah, it's a major problem.
It is a major problem. And let's be clear, like, the law allows them to do that. Would they be using the law in bad faith? Absolutely. Like, no one's going to disagree with that hot take.
Well, technically it's legal. Like, when you hear that argument.
Right. Technically what we're doing is by the book.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay.
Well, okay, but
I don't think that was the spirit of it, but in any event. Okay,
so maybe we'll see that reform. Maybe we won't. I don't have high hopes, but who knows? I don't know. What do you have any hot takes you want to add on to
probably
that?
not going to get passed.
Okay. So this other one, the independent legislature doctrine, this is a little bit more highfalutin.
Okay.
This is where we need to dust off our old JDs for a hot second. Have you heard of this by its name at least?
No, not offhand. No.
So this is the idea that if a majority of a state legislature votes to override the popular vote, they can send their own slate of electors.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
You're not wrong.
No, it's terrible.
It is horrible. So what the idea is, to use an example, let's use Minnesota, for example.
Okay.
Let's say, because we've been railing on Republicans for a while here.
Sure.
Let's just say that the Republicans won the state.
Okay.
Yeah. And normally, under normal circumstances, we would send 11 Republican votes to be counted, right?
Sure.
But let's say that the Democrats in the state legislature and the Democrats in the state Senate decide that they don't want to do that. They want to send their own slate of electors to vote for the 2024 Democratic nominee.
Okay, so therefore Trump would lose because, like, the Minnesota Democrats
So
would
even though a majority of our state wanted one, the state legislature could just be like, no, we don't like that. We're going to send our own.
That's terrible.
It is terrible. Right. So this idea, according to some, is probably the most likely scenario for 2024. That the candidate who loses not only the popular vote and also the traditional electoral college vote will become president through this.
Wow. That's just straight up rigging the election.
But it's not technically illegal. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's nonsense, though.
Okay. But it's not just me. It's not just a bunch of snooty ivory tower law professors.
Sure.
That are saying this. This idea, this independent legislature doctrine started with Bush v. Gore.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Shocked. Okay.
Which is, and I'm not just saying this because you think I like railing on Republicans, this is probably one of the worst legal opinions to ever come down from the Supreme Court. And everyone who ever attended a law school who sat through a lecture on this or something about this will tell you that it is just a bad opinion. In the opinion itself, they say It's probably not a good idea to use this opinion in any future ideas. We're just trying to solve this problem right here and right now.
Sure.
So anyway, that being said, Bush v. Gore, in a concurring opinion, you had Chief Justice Rehnquist, Justice Scalia, and Justice Thomas all agreeing that state legislatures have the plenary power to run elections and can even pass laws giving themselves the right to appoint electors. Okay? The U.S. Constitution, Zach, as you know and I know because that's what we read and study every single day, good old nighttime reading, gives state legislatures the sole authority to set all election rules, and including assigning electoral college votes. But what they say is this is immune from judicial review, state law, state constitution, and any initiative passed by voters. So they're saying this is inherent, and the only way you can take this away is to amend the Constitution.
Jeez.
That is what this concurring opinion said. And to really just kind of talk about where they're getting that framework from, Article 1, Section 4 of the United States Constitution says the state legislatures determine, quote, times, places, and manners for holding elections for senators and representatives. And then Article 2, Section 1 says, quote, each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors, blah, 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 and it goes on and on and on. So they're saying with those two things that state legislatures have the power to run all the elections and pass all the laws they want and send whatever slate of electors they want. Okay. So that was in a concurring opinion. And it involves two justices that have since passed on. Rehnquist and Scalia are no longer with us. We still have Thomas, though, right?
We do.
So keep a tally, if you will. That's one.
Fair enough.
So Justice Kavanaugh, Justice Alito, and Justice Roberts have all indicated some level of support. And Thomas makes 4, right? So you have in 2020... Pennsylvania, there's a Pennsylvania ballot extension for absentee case. This is one that Trump brought. You had Alito, Gorsuch, and Thomas all dissenting and citing the independent legislature doctrine in their dissent.
Oh, boy.
Okay. So what's our tally at now? A solid 3. Alito, Gorsuch, and Thomas have all cited to this.
Yep.
In 2020 as well, the Wisconsin ballot deadline case, also brought by Trump, you have Kavanaugh dissenting. And in a footnote, he cites the Bush v. Gore concurring opinion having to do with the independent legislature doctrine. And back in 2015, Chief Justice Roberts dissented to an opinion and indicated his likely support for the independent legislature doctrine, which brings us to a cool 5 out of 9.
I was going to say, yeah, it's the majority.
Amy Coney Barrett has not yet said anything about this, but I don't think it's too much of a stretch to imagine where she might come in. So a lot of stuff thrown at you.
Sure.
What do you think? Let's just start. Where's your head at, Zach?
I think, yeah, I mean, the playbook is there. So when you have a political party that's supported by, generally speaking, like a population that is mathematically decreasing because there appears to be an increase in the number of people that identify with different races and creeds and all these different things that perhaps aren't supportive of that same party. The only way to keep winning and stay in power then is by bending the rules, or at least stacking the laws in favor of what you believe in.
Yes, that is one way to do it. The other way, which would be a hell of a lot easier in every sense of the way, is to just change your party platform to be more popular with the general public.
Well, yeah, I mean that's
I mean that would be the simple way. That would be a very easy rule book to follow. It's like, oh, let's come up with some things that are just more popular on average. Look, man, we didn't even talk about this. Since 1988, the Republican Party has only won the popular vote for the presidential election twice.
Yeah, I was going to say it's been
two
two times
since 1988.
Yeah.
And how many Republican presidents have we had? How many terms of Republican presidents have we had? And how many of those people that they've appointed are now on the Supreme Court?
Right. No, exactly. So the only way to stay relevant is by changing the law, by bending the rules.
Yes.
I mean, that's it. So,
Yeah.
it's like paying off a high-interest credit card with another high-interest credit card. Like, at some point, you'll just run out of credit.
Yeah.
And so you can only do this for so long. But
unless you completely rig the system where you just have phony elections where, the party in power won 98% again.
Yeah. Again.
I mean, I'm not
No, it's like North Korea. There you go.
That's going to happen necessarily, but it's like if you do draw it out to its natural conclusion, I suppose that is where you end up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so it's it's a heck of a lot easier to actually put, let's not worry about the long-term irrelevancy here. Let's worry about the short-term staying in power.
Yes.
Well, let's just change the rules.
Yeah.
Right. And that's to me disgusting. It's pathetic. And I think if if that's how you have to win, then it just shows that your belief system, the platform of your party, is totally irrelevant with modern society. And I'm sorry, but I don't care. I mean, I think that's what's going on.
Yeah. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. It's okay. So let me frame this a little bit, and we don't have to harp on this all day long because we're both tired and exhausted and mentally and emotionally drained. At least I am after this. But do you think either of these different playbooks, either the Electoral College Act or the Independent Legislature Doctrine, do you think those are actually going to happen in 2024/2028?
I would say there's no part of me that says they couldn't happen, because they are both. They're sneaky. They require a bit of intellectual wherewithal. You don't need a law degree, but you actually have to kind of mentally get in the zone to think about this stuff and talk about this stuff, which does not resonate with I think the majority of Americans. And it's not an easy thing to talk about within a soundbite. So I could say, these would be things that would just pass, and probably most people wouldn't even think about it.
I mean, to that point, it's like you're not putting anyone down clearly by saying this is not within the whatever of most Americans. It's like I am hyper tuned into politics, like to a fault.
Yeah.
Like it is a bad thing, and I'm well educated, and I had never heard of this stuff, and even once I did, I was like, oh, wait, really? And I'm digging into these opinions like, oh, crap, really? It's like this isn't, you can't put this sort of thing on a bumper sticker.
That's right.
This is kind of heady stuff, but it appears that everyone is kind of setting this up to happen. So, I'm kind of right there with you. It's like, I see no reason why they wouldn't. I would like to believe in my optimistic heart of hearts that, the winner will win and the loser will lose, and everyone will go home and, watch the NFL playoffs at the end of the day or something like that. But being as tuned in as I am, maybe to a fault, I don't have a good feeling about it.
Same.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you for tuning in. If you made it all the way to the end, I appreciate it. If you didn't like it, I want to hear from you. Let me know. Let me know what I got wrong. Let me know where you disagree. Send us an email. Send us a message on Instagram or Twitter. Honestly, I don't pretend to have all the facts or have the perfect right opinion anywhere on anything. So whether you liked it or not, we got some weird and wild stuff coming at you next week. It won't be this heavy, I promise you. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but it'll probably be about aliens or ghosts. It's a pretty good bet. So
there you go. Doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on there.
All right. So if you can, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your local Electoral College member about our podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.